I can start.
All right,
Hi.
my name's Jackie Porter, and I'm here with Kevin Chu. We're working on a reframe, a redo of the product career development framework. And we have this third iteration of the CDF proposal. And Kevin has been invited to do a review of the second proposal, and then I closed the MR. And then Kevin took a second look at the third proposal and offered some really great feedback and some questions on why are we even changing the CDF? What is the precipitation of the working group, given that there's mixed reviews on the efficacy of the existing CDF? So Kevin, I would love to hear your questions or your thoughts, and then we can dive on into some of the nitty-gritty details.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. My fundamental question is, what is wrong with the CDF? I feel like we all have our personal thoughts about it, how good or how not good it is. And I'm curious on how we reach the stage where we decided, let's actually replace the current CDF with something that's different. So based on that, my general questions are, what's wrong? What problems are we trying to solve? And why is what is being proposed in the third iteration improvement over what we have?
Yeah, for sure. So in the product working group, we established this working group to deliver a revised product career development framework for individual contributor roles. So the scope was to take a look at our IC ladder and to reframe it after conducting research to incorporate industry standards on product manager skills and requirements. We also wanted to evaluate internal expectations of product manager responsibilities. So the internal expectations would be what product managers felt their roles and responsibilities were, but also what product marketing, what sales, other go-to-market functions thought product managers should be doing, and engineering counterparts, which includes infrastructure, development, tech writing, and product design. We also wanted to make sure that we established clear quantitative measures for progress in the CDF. And then finally, some other exit criteria included training and a pilot program for how to use the CDF. So a big part of the exit criteria is to make sure that people are well prepared in using the CDF. And the last exit criteria is a simplification of the PM competencies. So as an overview, our goal wasn't to completely create a brand new CDF framework. We wanted to come at this from a research-based perspective and to make sure that we were understanding how do we want to coach and grow product managers in the best way. When we did a product engagement survey back in 2021, we heard feedback that people weren't particularly satisfied with the career coaching and the career development that they were getting, that there was a lack of guidance and a lack of tangible, actionable feedback that people were getting, and that their results weren't necessarily measured tangibly. That is one of the precipitating factors for attaching clear quantitative measures for progress. When I entered into the GMP role about, I guess, 8 months ago now, I also received feedback that the CDF framework is rather arbitrary, that people don't really understand how they flow through the CDF, because the existing 4 tracks don't have benchmarks for performance. There isn't a comparison across the product organization on how you actually progress through your ladders or what product leaders are looking for. So there's a lack of transparency in how you actually go through the gates and when you accomplish those gates successfully. So those are sort of the recap from like an exit criteria for what we were trying to accomplish from all the inputs into the working group. The reason why we started the working group was from a suggestion with Anoop and Farnoosh and Scott. So Farnoosh suggested that we establish the working group after coming up with this proposal and getting some support and feedback from other PMs and other leadership that this was a worthwhile pursuit. So then after we completed this various research initiatives, we had some pretty good insights from internal expectations, but also external expectations. So what I mean by external expectations, we interviewed a couple of product-led organizations, and they came back with the things that they're evaluating their product managers by. And these are aspirational companies that GitLab wants to be like. And this is where we found our current CDF didn't really measure up to. So we found that our current CDF is very GitLab focused. It doesn't translate well across to other product organizations. And we wanted to grow other product managers so that they could be product managers in other companies and other product-led companies as well. When we look at industry-based requirements, there's 5 bullet points that are also summarized out of that research, and you made a great connection here. These new CDF tracks or competencies are very explicit into the kinds of things that we're trying to coach and drive product managers accomplishing, because these are industry-wide requirements that are generally understood by both product-led companies and by the industry of what makes a product manager successful. What's also interesting is that these 5 competencies are inclusive of pricing and of growth. Our current CDF model is unusable by pricing and growth. They have to kind of create their own skills and their own competencies to coach people to. So the only thing that's changing in the current new proposal is the KPIs for growth and for pricing. So they're able to still use product vision and execution, sensing mechanisms, and the other, proposed competencies for pricing and for growth PMs, just like the other product organization, which is different. Keith in pricing has a completely different CDF for pricing that is unconnected to the product organization. And when we start to think about career opportunities and lateral or vertical growth for product managers, the more opportunities that we can afford transparency for product managers to go to pricing or go to growth, and giving them transferability of skills through those different career paths, we're affording them that growth opportunity with the CDF. So that's another justification for broadening the altitude of these and abstracting it from the current process-based CDF tracks that we have. So that's the journey.
Cool, thank you for sharing. You have to say the 3rd iteration of the CDF every single time you say CDF. Thanks for the overview. That's really helpful. I have a question on how to use the KPIs. So one thing I think we can't remove is there's still people in the equation. How do you, now that we've put in, like, for certain things, you should look at this KPI. How do we know what's good, what's bad? Or is that even a consideration? Or is that still largely a subjective thing that you figure out between you and your manager?
It's a really good question. So the way that we're iterating on this in the working group, and I'm really open to feedback here, is that these KPIs are the current guideline for what you should be looking at as a manager, and you and your PM would select the direction of these KPIs as a benchmark and the result that you would want for that CDF review cycle. And then you would review that result and kind of reflect on that in this particular segment, this particular competency. Some of these KPIs have very tangible outputs, and others are not as tangible. And when we start to also look at some of them are overlapping and they're not a one-for-one relationship, they become more flexible too. I think we should also think of these KPIs as being flexible for the product manager and the manager's relationship and how they want to evaluate that product manager's journey through their career. So, for example, if there's this product manager who used to be a technical product manager and they joined GitLab and they're developing their sensing mechanism skill set, we may really want to dial in their capacity of using appropriate methods for customer interviewing. So we may optimize on that KPI rather than focusing of the recording of competitive tool walkthrough. So this is where you can scale up and scale down based off of where you need to grow and coach your product manager, instead of looking at each individual KPI and benchmarking each individualistic KPI.
Cool. That's great to hear, because at first read, I was thinking, oh, yeah, some of these make a lot of sense. Some of it may not be applicable, but what you're essentially saying is these are guidelines. Choose the thing that's appropriate in whatever instances you're under. And then I assume that also means, let's say, for whatever reason, there is another KPI that isn't documented. We just go through the handbook change process, say, hey, we're going to be looking at this, add it, boom.
Yes, exactly. And then it gets added to our lexicon of this is product manager performance. And that allows us to then continuously improve and better our evaluation of career growth for product managers.
Cool. A different set of questions.
Yeah.
So I agree that the existing CDF can be interpreted as really evaluating whether you're good at a process, the GitLab development process. There are, however, based on your interpretation of the CDF, like cross-cutting soft skills that's generally useful, which is also embedded in many of the competencies. And I was curious, like developing something like this is a hard exercise, period. And to whittle it down to a small number of things you're actually writing down and looking at is really difficult. What were some of the things that didn't make this iteration that you kind of really struggled to cut out?
Yeah. So when we first took a step back, we had seven tracks, and we ended up combining quad hive alignment and values first into aligning teams with values. And we felt like that was a good fit, but it also kind of dilutes the emphasis on striving to build cohesive, high-performing teams, because then we are focusing on like optimizing people's use of GitLab values, which is likely the tool that you'll use as a PM anyways, but it's not the only tool. that you'll use to build high performing teams. So that was kind of a tricky thing to reconcile. When we look at communication skills, we embedded this in thought leadership as well as the product-led growth, where we start to see influencing communication skills internally, because you have to partner with a lot of your counterparts in order to ensure that you're working seamlessly across your organization to inspire the product-led growth ethic, especially when you start to essentially like deprecate the white glove sales treatment to empower your product to sell for itself. So doing those kinds of motions, internal enablement and influencing communication skills had to be embedded inside of that measurement, which was something we had to make clear in this competency, but it's a different altitude. So like, how do we convey that this elevation of competency is a little bit higher than the current representation of competencies that we have today? Because the current competencies that we have listed in the handbook, the list of 25 that we have on the handbook page, are all very granular skills. And these competencies are more like collections of those represented skills that are illustrative of the most successful product-led PMs that we interviewed. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. That's helpful. And in terms of the pilot that we're attempting to run now, what do you expect what do you want the output to look like? Like, what type of feedback are we running, like simultaneously, both the existing CDF and the proposal together, so that you get both sets to see how people react, feel, like or dislike about either.
That's exactly how I have it currently written here, is that using the new CDF template, which is in this doc, and it's not very pretty. And you may not know this, I'm red read colorblind, so it took me a long time to like figure out how to like use the Tanuki colors and like brand it like GitLab. So I redesigned the template so it matches like the spreadsheet that we're used to using. You would use this new template and run it alongside your existing CDF template. And then I have a suggestion to add me as like some sort of note to when you run your CDF, so that I can send you a survey to complete at your CDF review, so you can give feedback. It's going to have, you're going to be evaluated on like 4 different dimensions. One of it will be the person receiving the feedback, will be the quality of feedback that they're getting, the tangibility of like the kinds of feedback, like are they able to be actionable on what they need to do next to get to the next level, which has been like the biggest complaint that we have in the engagement feedback survey of the existing CDF, is that I don't know what to do next to progress my career at GitLab. And then the applicability of the product career development feedback to outside of GitLab. So do I feel like I'm getting information that would apply to my career development generally? And then we'll also evaluate the manager. We really want to know, is this really painful for you to grasp these new competencies? And are you doing, I loved how you put it, the mental gymnastics to understand how your product manager is performing? Or are these competencies natural as they do their job? Are you able to see how they're performing these tasks in their day-to-day? Because even when I think about my current product managers, it can be really challenging to assess validation track when we're in a perpetual engineering allocation, headcount reset, or rapid action. So it's one of those things where, how do we make sure that we are prepared to consider a product manager's growth and career development when we have unforeseeable circumstances of product development lifecycle, and we shouldn't constrain their career development toward product priorities and product development or product lines that need to be in maintenance, for example. So then we'll collect that feedback in that survey. Currently, I have 2 CDF evaluations in the pilot. And after we get that survey feedback, we'll close the pilot. Once we read out the results, we'll iterate on the CDF. Depending on the feedback, the intent would be to further simplify it and to improve the training content that we have for it.
Got it. For this survey results, so CDFs don't happen every day. The most frequent I know of is once per month. Are you interested in having multiple tries from one set of people, or are you just looking for first time use?
Yeah, I would like to have 2 per pair, so 2 per manager teammate,
right,
so that we have multiple.
They get at least twice, two stabs at it. Got it. Okay.
So that way, like, because the initial impression of like you having to change your context of evaluating,
it's more jarring, most likely.
Yes. And then setting the KPIs is going to be a bear. Like you having that conversation of like, how do I evaluate my PM KPI? Like, I feel like that's going to be a bear. That'll be hard for that first conversation.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Well, thank you for walking me through. This is really helpful context. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate your time in asking the thoughtful questions, and again, like, you're helping us just be better, and asking these questions is just invaluable. If we don't get these questions and we don't think thoughtfully about it, we're going to cause potential harm to our team, and I really don't want that. I want us to be better and stronger. I don't want to like cause harm. That's not my intention. I want us to grow people in a better way. That's the whole purpose of the CDF, you know.
That's wonderful.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.